Okay, so first of all, before we start the proceedings in this course, I encourage you all to have a look at the course policy file that I have shared, and it will have all the major points pertaining to the course. How is the evaluation done, how many quizzes, what sort of credit, and what you can expect, etc. Okay, let me also tell you that I am not going to send you long lectures. The attention span has considerably gone down, and therefore what I'm planning is a set of short lectures, 15 to 20 minutes on average, on crucial points, very precise as well as to the point, and with examples in very brief manner. Okay, so it will look capsule like, but it will do the job. So let's get started. And this clip is intended to introduce the landscape, the academic landscape of professional ethics, as well as the basic themes that we need to be familiar with before we venture into the course. Okay, so at least some of you might know already that ethics is a sub discipline within philosophy. So when we talk about professional ethics, and therefore we are basically talking about a sub-discipline within ethics, which in itself is a sub-discipline of philosophy. So we need to define what philosophy is, and I'm going to do it in my own way. You have the freedom to figure it out yourself as to what do you mean by philosophy. You can pick it up from the internet and define it in your own way, but I'll be giving a very simple basic definition. To do that, it's important to know this particular term known as discourse. Okay, so discourse is normally linguistic description. It's a written or spoken communication about some particular theme, okay, or some about some agenda, some point. Okay, so I may be having a discourse about COVID-19 and how fast it is spreading. Okay, somebody may be having a discourse about the political climate in Europe, okay, etc., etc. So discourses are linguistic expressions that are about a particular thing. Okay, and this is straightforward dictionary definition of what a discourse is. Now, usually in the academia, in institutes, we have first order discourses and second order discourses. So a first order discourse is a typical direct investigation about the world or things in the world. So for example, we have physics that talks about forces and how nature works, etc. Those are direct investigations about the world. Okay, now the moment we talk about the first order discourses or issues in first order discourses, then we are moving into a second order discourse. So a second order discourse is a discourse about first order discourses, and the simple definition of philosophy is that it is a second order discourse. That means that we are interested in looking at or scrutinizing or assessing, analyzing first order discourses. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples. Some of those are very straightforward examples, and to start with, the case of a small girl asking someone as to why is it that a bicycle is easy to ride when it's moving fast, which implies that the bicycle is difficult to balance when it is stationary, and when you lift your legs up without the stance on, you're going to fall off. Now, a physicist might give you a particular explanation. A physicist might just say that, oh, here are concepts like gyroscopic force or angular momentum, rake forces, etc., etc., and he or she might just explain it in a particular way. A philosopher would not be interested in that explanation itself, but a philosopher would be interested in understanding, what is that discourse of the first, what is that first order discourse? Say, for example, what do we mean by the concept of explanation? What is explanation? And should we be justified in one explanation, or should we have more explanations, etc., etc.? Okay, so when we ask, what do we mean by a scientific explanation, then we are doing philosophy of science. Okay, here is another example. Suppose someone is saying, looking at a painting or a landscape and saying that, oh, here is a beautiful painting, or here is a beautiful landscape. Now that's a first order remark, first order discourse, and a philosopher might be just interested in asking, what do we mean by beauty, or what is art, or things like that. How do we compare artworks? Okay. One more example, and this is known to us all, that suppose while writing an examination someone is saying that cheating in the exam is bad. A philosopher would ask, what is good and what is bad? What are those definitions of goodness and badness? Is cheating morally justified or not? These kinds of interesting questions about the first order remarks or discourses. Okay, so quick recap: ethics falls within philosophy, therefore professional ethics falls within philosophy. Now, a discourse is a written or spoken communication about something or debate, and there are first order discourses and second order discourses. Now, traditionally, philosophy is divided into 5 compartments. Okay, so we have metaphysics that discusses about what is real and what is not real. So it's a second order discourse questioning about what is reality and how do we differentiate it from appearances, and so on and so forth. We also have logic, where we engage in second order discourses about reasoning. What is good reasoning? What is bad reasoning? How do we understand good arguments as opposed to bad arguments, etc. Thirdly, there is epistemology, which is a kind of discussion about second order discussion about knowledge and the conditions of knowledge. How do we know? How do we define knowledge, etc. Then, similar to the example that I discussed, we have aesthetics that deals with beauty and art and aesthetic judgments. Okay, and finally we have ethics that engage, where we engage with issues about justice, issues about goodness, and so on and so forth, moral justifications, etc. Now, people might just say that there are many more branches like political philosophy, so on and so forth. Yes, definitely, but traditionally this is how you can picture the landscape of philosophy. Okay, there are many more branches. It's a 2,500-year-old documented history that we have. So both in the Eastern traditions as well as in the Western traditions, we can see these 5 neat divisions. Okay, now we already talked about this, that professional ethics is part of philosophy. So how do we define that? And this is a symbol, perhaps a very general definition. Professional ethics is a second order discourse about a professional's actions. Okay, and you can improve on this definition by saying that it is a second order discourse, but it's not about a professional's complete set of actions, but few actions. Okay, and we will look at those specifically as we progress. Now, before we proceed further, what I would like to sort of inform you is the typical FAQs that come across. Say, for example, students usually ask me, what's the difference between ethics and morality? Now, straightforward answer is it's used interchangeably. You can use it interchangeably. Having said that, there is a particular way in which the term ethics is used in our civilization. And when you use it in that particular way, then perhaps there is a difference between ethics and morality. And that use is like this, that we have ethics for doctors and ethics of war and ethics for engineers. Those are understood as codes or rules or principles that we follow. Okay, so for example, there is an ethics to some profession. When we say that, okay, this is how I am supposed to behave in this profession, there are codes, like codes for doctors. There we are not talking about second order discourse. Okay, so ethics in this way as norms or codes. Okay, there I hear that there is even an ethics for the mafia. Okay, they do operate with certain types of codes. Okay, they believe in those codes. Now that's ethics as a set of codes. But when we talk about ethics, we are talking about ethics as a second order discourse, as a philosophical investigation into actions of professionals in here, because it's professional ethics. Now here we talk about what is goodness, is something morally justified, and we also talk about these first order discourse such as codes. For example, why is it that we should protect whistleblowers? Why is it that we should not operate without consent from the clients, and so on and so forth? So it's a big arena of second order discourses about codes and other things, and it will be clear to you towards the end of this clip when I give you the course content. Okay, so ethics and morality are interchangeably used most often, but when somebody is using ethics as a code of conduct, like there is an ethics in IIT Roper as to how should we write examination or how should we behave in a particular context. Okay, those are codes. Okay, this is created by society around us or people around us. This is also created by individuals. Okay, it's not a second order discourse. So typically we have these three watertight compartments of legal ethics as a code and ethics as a philosophical discussion. Okay, so legal, ethical, and one may say moral. Okay, so when you use ethics as a code, we have this difference, but otherwise it's not very prominent. Okay, so what we take to be legal in a particular country based on the recommendations of the state and the legislature and constitution may not sound ethical for many people. Okay, or many communities or societies or regions. And the same thing that you take to be ethical based on certain codes may not ring a bell to be morally justified when you think about it in a second order discourse rationally. Okay, here is my simple example, and I think it's very clear from this discussion that if you take the debate about or the discourse about death penalty. Now here is the map of United States of America, and you see that many states disagree about, whether it's legal or illegal. Okay. Now, individuals within the state may also disagree with the state. So I may be in a particular state and I might just disagree with the legality of that, because my code of ethics is different. Okay. Now, if suppose my code of ethics is consistent with the legality of a particular state, yet in a philosophical discussion there may be differences coming up due to the second order nature of the discussion. So here is a worldwide depiction of how many countries have legalized capital punishment. Okay, so you can clearly see that India goes for capital punishment. In the rarest of rare crimes, or where the crime is grave, we give capital punishment. But again, within India we can have societies with codes of ethics, or individuals with codes of ethics who disagree with that. And even in philosophical discussions you can have people who disagree with it. So the whole point about this clarification is that so often it may be the case that your belief in a code of ethics might be contradicting the legality in the state, and your belief in a code of ethics might also disagree with the second order discourse. Okay, so the state might just feel that something is illegal. You may not feel that something is illegal because you believe in a different ethics. So the legal need not always be ethical, okay, depending on the code, and the ethical need not always be legal. Okay, some things are illegal, some things are illegal based on the state's recommendation. Some things are ethical or unethical depending on certain codes. Certain things are ethical or unethical depending also on a rational second order discourse. Okay, so recap again, there are discourses, first order discourses and second order discourses, and ethics, professional ethics is a second order discourse about a professional's actions. Okay, now second order discourse might just also investigate the codes of conduct or the codes that the professional inherits or believes in. It also may have debates about punishment, debates about permissibility, and so on and so forth. So we went into the clarification saying that if we use ethics as a code, like code of ethics for doctors, then it stays in the first order discourse. But when we discuss about that, then we are in philosophy, and therefore we are in professional ethics in the sense of the, or in the spirit of the course. Okay, aligned with the spirit of the course. Okay, so now we move on to something known as Washington Accord. It's an accord or set of permissible as well as routine items about academia, engineering academia across the world. But India signed this, if I am not wrong, somewhere in 2014. The accord came in 1989, but India went into that in 2014 or 2015. So our codes of ethics is basically originating out of Washington Accord. It's an agreement between bodies representing bodies with powers to sort of accredit engineering degree programs. So they have stipulated codes, norms and principles, and we will scrutinize those norms and principles, and we will be doing professional ethics. We are not going to completely do a first order discourse, we will be doing a second order discourse. So what do we mean by completely agreeing or processing first order discourse. If you just believe that, okay, here are the norms for doctors, I'm just blindly believing it. Okay, it's fine. I mean, if you want to be a doctor or an engineer, you have norms and codes you have to follow. But if you're just blindly doing that, then we are not doing professional ethics. Okay, but if you're rationally engaging in a discourse, second order discourse about the validity of those claims, then we are doing professional ethics, and that's the whole aim of this course. Okay, so the course is divided into 3 parts. So the extreme right, you have codes such as safety risk, precautionary principles, etc. Those, all of them coming from the Washington Accord. But at the same time, we have current trends in professional ethics, and where we discuss a lot of case studies, cases about human technology interactions. And there is a reason why we do that, because each case pertains to each case implies a particular ethical theme. Okay, and we also look at theories in ethics as in the sub-theme of philosophy, where we talk about various ways in which philosophers have over the years argued as to what is good and what is not. Okay.